Ambassador Vexthor of the Xylaxian observation fleet had witnessed the collapse of 17 civilizations during his 3-century career. Each followed the same pattern: discovery of atomic power, political tension, global warfare, and finally, extinction. But Earth was different, and that terrified him. Supreme Commander, we're detecting multiple nuclear detonations across the planet's surface, reported Lieutenant Naira, her crystalline form pulsing with concerned purple light. Radiation levels in major population centers are impossible. These readings suggest the humans should be extinct. Vexthor floated to the main viewscreen of the cloaked observation vessel, his tentacles curling thoughtfully as he studied the blue planet below. The mushroom clouds were visible even from orbit, yet the planet's electronic communications networks remained active. More puzzling still, their sensors detected organized human activity in what should have been lethal radiation zones. "Patch me through to their primary information networks," Vexthor ordered. "Let's see how they're responding to their own extinction." The screens filled with what humans called social media feeds. Instead of panic and chaos, they showed something unprecedented: coordination, adaptation, and even humor. Humans were sharing radiation safety protocols, organizing supply chains, and posting what they called memes about nuclear winter fashion trends. "This defies all known patterns," muttered Science Officer Krell, his exoskeleton clicking nervously as he analyzed the data. "They're treating global nuclear war like an inconvenient weather event. Look at this, they're already establishing trade routes between their underground shelters." Underground shelters. That was another impossibility. Most species barely managed to build basic bomb shelters before their nuclear wars. But humans? They had constructed vast underground cities, complete with hydroponic farms, fusion reactors, and entertainment centers. They had been preparing for this scenario for generations. "Commander," called out Communications Officer Zira, her antenna twitching with excitement. "We're picking up a transmission. It's addressed to us." "What?" Vexthor's tentacles went rigid with shock. "That's impossible. Our cloaking technology is perfect. They couldn't possibly dash." "Greetings, alien observers," a calm human voice filled the bridge. "This is Director Jackson of the Global Emergency Response Network. We've been tracking your ship since it entered orbit 3 days ago. We thought we'd give you time to process what you're seeing, but perhaps you'd like to come down for a proper chat? We make excellent coffee, though I should warn you, our current supply is mostly instant." The bridge crew stared at their commander in stunned silence. Not only had humans survived multiple nuclear exchanges, but they had also detected a cloaked alien vessel and were treating first contact as casually as a neighbor dropping by for coffee. "Should I respond?" Zira asked uncertainly. Vexthor felt a strange sensation in his primary brain, something between terror and fascination. In all his years of observing developing civilizations, he had never encountered anything like this. These humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving in conditions that should have ended their species. "Open a channel," he decided. "And, perhaps have the xenobiology team analyze whether we can safely consume this coffee they mentioned. Something tells me we're about to learn a great deal about humanity, and we should be properly caffeinated for it." As the communication channel opened, Vexthor couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another first contact scenario. This was the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that could laugh in the face of nuclear Armageddon wasn't just resilient, they were something entirely new. And as Director Jackson's friendly voice began explaining the intricacies of their underground civilization network, complete with references to something called post-apocalyptic book clubs, Vexthor realized that the galaxy would never be quite the same after meeting humanity. The descent into Sanctuary Hub 7 was nothing like what Ambassador Vexthor had expected. Instead of finding desperate survivors huddled in cramped bunkers, he and his team emerged into what could only be described as an underground metropolis. The vast cavern stretched for kilometers, its ceiling adorned with artificial sunlight panels that mimic the daily cycle of Earth's sun. "Welcome to New Denver," Director Jackson said, gesturing to the sprawling cityscape before them. "One of our larger hubs, housing about 500,000 people. The hydroponics level alone covers 3 square kilometers." Lieutenant Naira's crystalline form sparkled with amazement as she recorded everything with her sensor arrays. "This infrastructure, it's decades old. You built all this while maintaining a functioning surface civilization?" "Oh, longer than that," Jackson chuckled, leading them through streets lined with shops, schools, and parks. "The first serious underground development started during something called the Cold War. Each generation since has expanded and improved the network. My grandmother designed these light panels, actually." The aliens watched as children played in a park beneath artificial sunlight, while adults went about their daily routines as if living hundreds of meters underground was perfectly normal. Shops were open, restaurants were serving meals, and there was even a theater advertising an upcoming performance of The Mushroom Cloud Silver Lining, a post-nuclear comedy. "Your species prepared for nuclear war by building luxury bunker cities?" Science Officer Krell asked, his exoskeleton vibrating with confusion. "The resource investment alone would have been astronomical?" Jackson finished with a smile. "Sure, but compare it to the cost of extinction. Besides, we didn't just build shelters, we built communities. Speaking of which, you're just in time for the weekly community festival. We rotate themes, this week is pre-war nostalgia." As if on cue, they rounded a corner to find a massive underground plaza transformed into a carnival. People in vintage clothing danced to old music, played games, and shared food from various cultural traditions. The scene was surreal, a celebration of the past while living in what should have been a post-apocalyptic nightmare. "I don't understand," Vexthor admitted, his tentacles twisting in confusion. "Your surface cities are irradiated, your atmosphere is contaminated, and you're having a party?" An elderly woman overhearing their conversation laughed. "Oh, honey," she said, offering him what appeared to be a baked good, "if we stopped living every time someone dropped a nuke, we'd never get anything done. Try a cookie, it's my grandmother's recipe, though we had to adapt it for hydroponic ingredients." Zira, the communications officer, was busy analyzing their information networks. "Director, according to these records, you have hundreds of these facilities worldwide, all interconnected. There's even an underground high-speed transit system?" "The Subterranean Express," Jackson nodded. "Currently running at 87% efficiency despite the recent unpleasantness upstairs. We're particularly proud of the Australian line, engineering challenge, tunneling under the ocean, but worth it for the cultural exchange programs." As they toured deeper into the facility, they discovered entire research centers dedicated to radiation cleanup, atmospheric purification, and surface rehabilitation. Teams of scientists worked round the clock, monitoring surface conditions and developing new technologies for eventual reclamation. "You're not just surviving," Krell realized, his scientific curiosity fully engaged. "You're actively working to restore your surface world while maintaining a complete civilization underground. The technological and social advancement required." "We've had a lot of practice," Jackson explained, leading them into a massive control center. Screens displayed real-time data from surface sensors, communication networks, and restoration projects worldwide. Humanity has been imagining and preparing for this scenario for generations. Science fiction, disaster planning, civil defense, it all contributed to building not just the infrastructure, but the mindset needed to survive. Vexthor watched as humans coordinated global recovery efforts with the same casualness others might plan a dinner party. They had turned what should have been the end of their civilization into merely another chapter in their history. "Director," he said finally, "I believe we may have seriously underestimated your species." Jackson smiled, checking a notification on her tablet. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. The Australian hub just announced they're hosting an underground surfing competition next month, something about wave generators and artificial beaches. Care to stick around? I hear the post-apocalyptic swimwear fashion show is quite something. As his team continued to document this impossibility of an underground civilization, Vexthor couldn't help but wonder, what else were humans capable of? And more importantly, what would the galaxy look like once they inevitably emerged from their bunkers, stronger and more unified than ever? Your attention, please. The AI assistant's holographic form flickered to life in Sanctuary Hub 7's main plaza. Today's surface radiation levels are trending downward. The reclamation teams in Sectors 4 through 7 have been cleared for their scheduled deployment. All volunteers please report to Decontamination Station Alpha. Ambassador Vexthor watched in fascination as dozens of humans calmly made their way to the designated area, suited up in advanced radiation gear that his team's analysis suggested was far more sophisticated than anything their own civilization had developed for similar purposes. Remarkable, Lieutenant Naira commented, her crystalline form pulsing with blue light as she scanned the equipment. These suits aren't just protective gear, they're mobile research stations. Each one is gathering data, testing soil samples, analyzing atmospheric conditions. Of course, said Professor Winters, the head of the Reclamation Division. We're not just surviving down here, we're actively working to reclaim our surface world. Every team member is part scientist, part environmental engineer, and part data collector. Some even stream their expeditions for the education channels. Science Officer Krell clicked his mandibles in surprise. You broadcast potentially dangerous recovery operations, as entertainment? Educational entertainment, Winters corrected with a grin. The kids love it. We've got a whole generation growing up underground who are absolutely fascinated by surface restoration work. They play radiation cleanup crew in the recreation zones. The alien delegation followed Winters into the Reclamation Command Center, where wall-to-wall screens displayed real-time data from teams working across the globe. One particularly large display showed a heat map of radiation levels, with steadily expanding green zones indicating successfully decontaminated areas. Here's something that might interest you, Winters said, pulling up a detailed holographic model. We call it the Genesis Protocol, our comprehensive plan for surface rehabilitation. We're not just clearing radiation, we're rebuilding entire ecosystems from the ground up. The hologram showed layers of specialized bacteria and engineered plants, each designed to clean and restore the soil. Above that, atmospheric processors worked to filter the air, while modified drone swarms helped spread restoration agents across vast areas. You developed all of this after the nuclear exchange? Vexthor asked, his tentacles waving in disbelief. A young technician named Raj laughed from his monitoring station. Oh no, we had most of this ready to go decades ago. The Genesis Protocol was my great-grandfather's doctoral thesis. Each generation has been refining and improving it. We even run simulations in school, it's part of the standard curriculum. As if to demonstrate, a group of children passed by the command center's window, wearing miniature versions of the radiation suits and carrying educational tablets. Their teacher was explaining the basics of soil restoration while they enthusiastically took notes. Your children learn about nuclear decontamination, in primary school? Communications Officer Zira's antennae twitched in amazement. Among other things, Winters nodded. Along with standard subjects, they learn survival skills, environmental science, and practical engineering. Last week's science fair had some fascinating projects on radiation-resistant agriculture. The winning team developed a new strain of mushrooms that actually accelerates soil decontamination. The aliens watched as another team returned from the surface, their suits automatically sterilized as they passed through decontamination. Despite having just worked in what should have been lethal conditions, they were laughing and discussing plans for dinner. Oh, that reminds me, Winters said, checking his tablet. The Hydroponics Division is hosting a Taste of Tomorrow event tonight. They're showcasing new radiation-resistant crop varieties. The modified strawberries are particularly impressive, almost twice the size of pre-war varieties, and they help clean the soil they grow in. Vexthor found himself struggling to reconcile the scene before him with everything he knew about nuclear warfare. These humans weren't just surviving, they were innovating, teaching, and even enjoying themselves in the midst of what should have been their civilization's darkest hour. "Professor," he said carefully, "in all my years of observing developing civilizations, I've never seen anything like this. Most species would be fighting over remaining resources, yet you're holding agricultural food fairs and teaching children about environmental restoration." Winters smiled, pulling up another hologram, this one showing the steady expansion of habitable zones around major sanctuary hubs. "Ambassador, humanity has been imagining and preparing for this scenario for generations. We've written books about it, made movies about it, created games about it. When it finally happened, we didn't just have plans, we had hope. And sometimes, hope is the most powerful innovation of all." As if to punctuate his point, cheers erupted from one of the monitoring stations. A team in Beijing had just successfully decontaminated a major agricultural zone, weeks ahead of schedule. The celebration quickly spread through the command center, and Vexthor noticed something remarkable: not a single human seemed surprised by the success. They had expected it all along. The Global Council chamber of Sanctuary Hub 7 hummed with activity as representatives from underground cities worldwide gathered for the first official diplomatic meeting with the Xylaxian delegation. Ambassador Vexthor couldn't help but notice how the chamber itself reflected human ingenuity. What appeared to be marble columns were actually advanced air filtration systems, and the decorative ceiling panels were sophisticated radiation detectors. "Before we begin," announced Council President Isabella Martinez, "I'd like to acknowledge our friends from Melbourne Hub who are joining via Quantum Link. Their surfing competition was too important to reschedule." This drew knowing chuckles from the assembled humans. Vexthor exchanged glances with his science team. Even their quantum communication technology seemed impossibly advanced for a species that had just suffered a nuclear war. Lieutenant Naira's scans confirmed what they had all suspected: humanity's technological level far exceeded their initial assessments. "Ambassador," Martinez continued, "we understand you have questions about our preparation and response to recent events. We're here to provide answers and, perhaps, propose something more." The holographic display in the center of the chamber activated, showing a timeline that stretched back centuries. "What you're seeing," explained Dr. Patel, the Council's chief historian, "is humanity's long journey of preparation. It began with simple civil defense programs, but each generation built upon the last's work. You're telling us," Science Officer Krell clicked thoughtfully, "that your entire species has been systematically preparing for nuclear war for hundreds of years?" "Not just nuclear war," corrected General Rodriguez, his hologram flickering in from the South American hub. "We prepared for everything: pandemics, climate disasters, asteroid impacts. Nuclear war just happened to be first on the list." The display shifted to show a vast network of connected facilities, research centers, and survival programs spanning the globe. "We call it the Continuity Initiative," Martinez explained. Every nation, every culture contributed their own expertise. Japanese earthquake-resistant architecture, Russian cold-weather survival techniques, Australian water conservation methods, it all came together. "But why?" Vexthor asked, his tentacles swaying with curiosity. "Most species only begin such preparations when conflict is imminent." An elderly council member named Dr. Ibrahim smiled. "Have you ever heard of science fiction, Ambassador? Humans have been imagining and writing about disasters for centuries. We turned our fears into stories, our stories into plans, and our plans into this." He gestured to the thriving underground city around them. The display changed again, showing footage from pre-war preparation drills. Millions of people calmly following evacuation procedures, children in schools practicing survival techniques, scientists conducting restoration experiments. It looked less like preparation for disaster and more like a civilization getting ready to evolve. You staged regular drills, with your entire global population? Communications officer Zira's antennae twitched in disbelief. Of course, Martinez nodded. Every 3 months. We turned it into something of a festival, actually. Communities would compete for the fastest evacuation times, most innovative survival solutions. The Netherlands hub still holds the record for fastest hydroponic farm setup, 12 hours from scratch. The revelation hit Vexthor like a gravity wave. These humans hadn't just survived nuclear war, they had been rehearsing for it, refining their response, and building their underground civilization for generations. What appeared to be impossibly fast adaptation was actually the execution of long-prepared plans. There's more, Dr. Patel added, pulling up new data. We've been monitoring deep space for centuries. We knew someone would notice when the nuclear exchange began. In fact, we've had a first contact protocol specifically for this scenario. The alien delegation stared in stunned silence as they realized the implications. Humanity hadn't just prepared for nuclear war, they had prepared for what came after, including first contact with alien civilizations. Is that why you were so calm about detecting our cloaked ship? Vexthor asked. Martinez smiled. Ambassador, we detected your observation posts in the Kuiper Belt 3 decades ago. We just thought it would be polite to wait for you to make the first move. Although, I must admit, we didn't expect it would take a nuclear war to finally get your attention. As the meeting continued, Vexthor began to understand that he wasn't just witnessing the aftermath of a disaster, he was seeing the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had turned preparation for catastrophe into an art form, and survival into a celebration of life itself. Madam President, he said finally, I believe the Galactic Council will need to rethink its entire classification system for developing civilizations. You've created something entirely new here. Oh, this? Martinez gestured to their underground world. This is just phase 1. Wait until you see our plans for planetary rehabilitation and space colonization. Would you like to stay for that presentation? The cafeteria is serving their famous radiation-resistant coffee cake today. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations gathered to hear Ambassador Vexthor's report on humanity. The massive holographic displays showed images of Earth's underground cities, restoration efforts, and most surprisingly, their rapid recovery rate. Distinguished members of the Council, Vexthor began, his tentacles moving with measured precision, what we witnessed on Earth defies everything we thought we knew about civilizational development. Humanity didn't just survive nuclear war, they thrived through it. The chamber erupted in murmurs as he displayed the latest data. Earth's surface radiation levels were dropping at rates that should have been impossible. Green zones were expanding daily, and the underground cities were already launching their next phase of development. But how? Demanded Representative ZYX of the Centaurian Alliance, their crystalline form flickering with skepticism. No species has ever survived a full-scale nuclear exchange, let alone emerged stronger. Lieutenant Naira stepped forward, her crystalline structure pulsing with excited light. Because, honored representatives, they never saw it as an ending. They saw it as a test they had been preparing for across generations. The screens filled with images of human children learning environmental restoration in underground schools, scientists developing new radiation-resistant crops, and communities celebrating their successes with festivals and competitions. They turned survival into an art form, Science Officer Krell added, his exoskeleton vibrating with enthusiasm. Their underground cities aren't just shelters, they're incubators for a new kind of civilization. One that treats catastrophe as a challenge rather than a conclusion. The Council watched in amazement as footage showed humans already beginning to resettle decontaminated surface areas. Their methods were revolutionary, combining biological engineering, nanotechnology, and social cooperation in ways no other species had conceived. But perhaps most remarkable, Vexthor continued, is what they plan to do next. He activated a new hologram showing humanity's proposed contributions to galactic civilization. Innovation in radiation shielding, advanced hydroponics, psychological adaptation techniques, and dozens of other fields where their unique experience had led to unprecedented breakthroughs. They're not asking to join the galactic community as refugees or survivors, Communications Officer Zira explained, her antennae quivering with excitement. They're offering to help us prepare for our own potential catastrophes. They want to teach other worlds how to build resilience into the very fabric of their societies. The chamber fell silent as President Martinez's hologram appeared, addressing the council directly. Distinguished representatives, she began with a warm smile, humanity has learned that the best way to face darkness is to prepare for it together. We've turned our underground cities into universities, our survival techniques into cultural exchanges, and our recovery efforts into a global celebration of life itself. She paused, letting her words sink in. We don't see our experience as a tragedy to recover from, but as wisdom to be shared. Every species faces its own challenges, we've simply had practice at turning challenges into opportunities. The Council's main chamber, normally a place of rigid protocol, burst into unprecedented applause. Species that had never agreed on anything found themselves united in admiration of human resilience and ingenuity. Therefore, Vexthor announced, I propose not only accepting Earth into the galactic community but establishing a new classification, resilient civilization status. Humanity has shown us that true advancement isn't measured by technology alone, but by the ability to face catastrophe with hope, unity, and even joy. As the Council voted unanimously to approve Earth's membership, President Martinez's hologram smiled again. We're honored to join the galactic community, she said. And to celebrate, we'd like to invite you all to what we call a housewarming party in Sanctuary Hub 7. We've figured out how to make our famous coffee cake safe for most carbon-based life forms. Vexthor watched as the council chamber transformed from a formal assembly into something more akin to a human celebration. Species that had never interacted before were eagerly discussing cultural exchange programs with Earth's underground cities. In that moment, he realized that humanity hadn't just survived their greatest challenge, they had transformed it into their greatest gift to the galaxy. A reminder that any species could face the impossible, as long as they faced it together, with preparation, innovation, and an unwavering belief in tomorrow. As the celebration continued, news arrived from Earth. The first surface city had been fully decontaminated and was ready for resettlement. The humans called it Phoenix City, named after a mythological bird that rose from its own ashes. Somehow, Vexthor thought, that seemed perfectly appropriate.